It's that time of year again. Halloween time. Time for games about vampires, zombies, and examining and criticizing the political philosophy of Ayn Rand and examining the balance of capitalism and morality. Let's take a look at Bioshock. Despite having a lot to say, the story keeps its narrative pretty simple. You're just a guy named Jack, and while flying to England, your plane crashes into the ocean. In a desperate bid to survive, you swim to a nearby island with a tower on it and enter a strange pod. It takes you to the underwater city called Rapture, while the founder, Andrew Ryan, explains what it's for.
His brow. No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone.
Ryan is very frustrated with the governments of the world, and wanting to build a capitalistic utopia under the sea, he built Rapture. However, a short time before the player arrives, things break down, and say Rapture is an eerie shell of its former glory is an understatement. Ryan is now a psychotic despot wanting to kill the player just for merely showing up without an invite, and so Jack decides to team up with Atlas, the leader of the Resistance, so the two can plan an escape, and Atlas is the nicer of the two. I mean, before he asks you to do anything, he asks, would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio? So let's start looking closer at how the story and its messaging are relayed, because it is fascinating to me. The story, again, is straightforward, except for a few cutscenes here and there that last well under a minute. The game is pretty fast-paced, with the story beats being recorded in logs or through the two-way radio you carry. The details that show a deeper narrative are in the details of what you see and piece together as you go along your quest to kill Ryan, so you can get the ability to leave the city. From what the player can tell, Rapture initially worked as Ryan attended and sparked innovation like many free markets do, up until something called Adam was discovered.
Adam presents new problems for the profession. As your tools improved, so do your standards. There was a time I was happy enough to take off a wart or two, or turn a real circus freak into something you can show in the daylight, but that was then, when we took what we got. But with Adam, the flesh becomes clay.
Covered. A miracle substance made by sea slugs that existed in Rapture's depth. Naturally wanting more, the scientists found that if you implanted the slug into the belly of a small child and had them ingest the Adam, they would then regurgitate more Adam. So the scientists kidnapped all the little girls in Rapture and turned them into little sisters, and then kidnapped some more people and fused them to their diver suits, turning them into the big daddies. Throw in a corrupt scumbag into the mix named Frank Fontaine, trying to take over Rapture, a civil war that took place over the Atom shortly before the player arrived, and the fact that Ryan now wants such a pure form of his ideology that he basically has become a delusional despot. He claims that Rapture is coming back, while we have seen the place is on fire, it's leaking, and he's having to use mind control to keep the populace in line.
Rapture is coming back to life. Even now, can't you hear the breath returning to her lungs? The shops reopening, the schools humming with the thoughts of young minds. My city will live. My city will thrive. Sweat matters, cars. Use your tools for pavement time.
And I think the game does do a good job of showing the breakdown of morality in this system and how it got to this point. Because like Ayn Rand, Andrew Ryan doesn't believe in morality or having a moral code. How far he's willing to go for that belief is really scary. In the third area, you hear about smugglers and how notorious they are and how dangerous they are to Rapture. What are these smugglers smuggling into Rapture that makes them so evil? Drugs? Weapons? Contrabands? None of the above. They're smuggling in Bibles. That's right, Andrew Ryan, this person who wants to build a society on absolute freedom and beliefs, will kill someone for not believing the same thing he does. Basically, Ryan wants an atheistic theocracy, which is very hypocritical of him. So let's talk about why Ryan's hypocrisy, wanting to have no moral code or ethics, is bad. As someone who does believe in capitalism and the free market, it only works if you have morality or moral people. Capitalism, just like any other economic system, has no moral. It's just a system. To put it simply, capitalism and the free market work like this. You have something I would like to trade, and I have something you would like. So we trade and we end up being happier. That said, if what we are trading are illegal weapons or narcotics, then that's not moral in the long term, might be bad for both of us. So you do need to have some morality and enforcement in your system. If you don't, well, look up the history of Chiquita Banana here on YouTube for what happens when capitalism gets so corrupt and has no balance and what it can crave into. It's a very interesting history, by the way. While it is possible to have some morality through reason itself, human beings are spiritual creatures. We need to believe in something. If you don't have any spirituality, it's easier to fall off the course. Now, when I say spirituality, I don't mean organized religion per se. You don't necessarily have to be Christianity. It doesn't have to be an organized religion. But you do have to have something that says, there's this thing called karma. It's a real bitch if you piss it off. So you better not go pissing it off. Because if you don't have anything like that in society and it's all based off how much you can earn and how much you can achieve without any consequences, you end up like Rapture here. Because of the power of what Adam can do and because they lost the ability to see the others as human beings or as important, we see some pretty devious and evil science experiments going on when it comes to harvesting the atom. We see the immorality of these little girls that got turned into the little sisters. And then we can only imagine what the people who got chosen to become big daddies went through, considering how our main character kind of becomes a pseudo big daddy at the end of the game. So it's very interesting to just see this lack of morality in the system. And it's one of the reasons Rapture fell, because of this pursuit of Adam, a pursuit of something that, if regulated, if done with human dignity, would have changed the world, has instead become the poison pill that ended up killing this place. Moving on to the game's moral choices for you, one of the many things you have to do is capture the little sisters. And first you have to defeat the big daddy that protects them. These guys are mini bosses. They take a lot of damage and give even more. And chances are you're going to die a couple of times in order to take one down. And then after that, you get a moral choice, where the game devolves a bit into self-interest versus selfishness. The difference between those two are the same as admiration and jealousy or ambition and greed. One is normal for human beings to have, and the other is when there's no check on said things. It gets twisted and becomes evil. Or when it comes to self-interest, it's saying I don't do anything that will harm me. Meaning if you can tell me why it's in my interest to do something, I will do it. Tell me that giving to the food bank means fewer people will be hungry and the community will be stronger, and how that benefits me can involve me having an act of altruism. And if I ever missed a meal, you could probably convince me to donate even more because it's something in my past. So you can convince people of self-interest to do selfless things. A selfish person would rob the food bank because he sees himself as more important than anybody else. So that's the difference. And again, as I'm saying, capitalism has no morals or any other checks and balances within itself. And if you don't believe me, again, look up Banana Republic, and I don't mean a clothing store. At any rate, the choice is to save them, but you collect fewer experience points to buy upgrades or kill them off and get a lot more experience. And here's where the self-interest kind of comes into play. Yes, you get less Adam, but because you're not a murderous douchebag, Tenenbaum, one of the scientists who created them, and is trying to undo the mess she made and get them out of Rapture, will thank you, and later on will start dropping presents for you, making up for the Adam you lost early on and giving you a lot more valuable abilities and power-ups than what you can typically purchase. So what do I not like about the system? Well, nothing in this story shows you becoming a horrible douchebag. While harvesting a little sister, although the censor is there, it's still a grisly act on screen. Nothing happens to Jack for doing it. You still go through the same story beats. Tenenbaum will still show up and help you out later in the game when you get in a jam due to the narrative. The last stage where you need the little sisters to guide you through an area is still there. The only difference is that this scene before has one or two line differences, with Tenenbaum telling you have committed many sins, and the girl saying lines that show more fear if you have harvested them, and praise if you've saved them.
You have committed many sins.
Come with me! Mama Tenenbaum says stay away from him.
You have saved many of my little ones.
Mama Tenenbaum said he'll help us.
Oh, yay. Way to hold the feet to the fire for killing kids there, game developers. And to be fair, even the developers agree they did not have time to really change things around. If you went down the dark path, that is. What would I liked to have seen? Well, if I went down harvesting instead of saving them, I want Tenenbaum to be less helpful, to the point where at the end she might just throw a note at me and tell me to go in alone and good luck, and I don't get any radio messages with tips. And then the last stage, I might have to go through a longer, more perilous route to get to the last boss. That would have at least shown there is consequences of acting selfish. Nobody wants to do a business with a selfish asshole if they can help it. That's kind of why Frank Fontaine was this unknown presence in Rapture's backstory that caused so much more problem. Adam may have been the dynamite. Frank Fontaine was the match that lit it. Anyways, the only difference you get from really harvesting and saving it is the ending, and if you harvest only one person, basically you'll start World War III. The X button that doomed the world. I would have liked some middle point endings that kind of went from good to bad depending on your choices. So the fact that there's only two endings, and to get the bad one you only have to make one evil decision, kind of brings the morality system into suspect. Like I said, it's kind of a good idea. Show self-interest versus selfishness, save the girls because you feel good about it, and then get rewarded later on. Life doesn't quite work that way 100%, but to get rewarded later on or act selfishly, and then, yeah, you might get more power up front, but you're going to pay consequences as people back away and don't want to deal with you. I would have loved to have seen that. It would have really brought home the messages I think they're trying to convey in this game a lot better. Anyways, I still enjoy this game. I enjoy the villains. There are two villains, but I won't spoil who the second one is. And just like I said, I love Andrew Ryan. While he does have some good points, and yes, I can see why he would be successful at first, still, if you have no moral compass to handle things involving human dignity, your society, or in this case, city, is just bound to collapse, both figuratively and literally. So I do love that point. Ordinarily, I was going to say let's move on to the gameplay. However, I think I took about 15 to 20 minutes on this script, and I'm going to break this video up into 2 parts. So we'll talk about the gameplay and the rest of the game in another video. You guys have a wonderful day. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe.
Ryan's great chain. Turns out Ryan's chain is made of gold, and ours are the sort with the big iron ball around your ankle. He's up in Fort Frolic banging fashion models. We're down in this dump yanking guts out of fish. Fontaine's promising something better. He's like one of us, you know? Like he's worked a day in his life. He says meet him at his fish packing joint at 11. I'll go, bring a couple of guys. Hey, it's not like things could get a lot worse.